Hi, I'm Skip Bedell. Welcome to the Barron Designs forward beam installation video. Now these beams are the perfect product to add a beautiful architectural feature to any room. They have the look and feel of real wood, including all the nicks and nail holes and grain, only the best part is they're made of a high density, lightweight polyurethane that's weatherproof, durable, and super easy to install. It couldn't be easier to get these installed on your own, and I'm going to show you how to do it in just a minute. But first, let's look at the tools you'll need to get the job done right. You'll need a ladder, lumber, be sure to have protective eyewear, a saw with a finished blade, level, laser line or chalk line, drill driver, mollies, a stud finder, pencils and a tape measure, T-bevel, screws, a caulk gun, block type PL Premium, color match caulk, a touch-up kit, painter's tape and a paintbrush, and a clean rag. Now that you've gathered all the tools that you need to get the job done, we're ready to begin. Before installing this material, it's important that you let it sit in the room that you'll be installing it in so it acclimates to the room temperature for at least 24 hours. The first thing you want to do is lay out your lines on the ceiling where your beams are going to be installed using a chalk line. If you don't have a chalk line, painter's tape works just as well. Once you have your lines marked on the ceiling, use a stud finder to mark each stud along your line with a pencil. Now determine the number of mounting blocks required for your installation. There needs to be a block on each end of the beam, plus one every 26 to 30 inches. Next, measure the inside dimension of the beam and subtract 1/8 of an inch to determine the size of your mounting blocks. Now that we have our measurements, it's time to cut some blocks. Cut the amount of blocks you calculated in your layout using the measurement from the inside of the beam you just took, so that the blocks of wood fit inside the dimension of the beam. Okay, so now that we have our blocks cut, we're going to want to go ahead and make some holes for our mollies to pass through. So I'm using a 3/16 inch drill bit. Drill at least 2 holes per block to make it easier to attach them to the ceiling with your screws or your mollies. All right, let's take them inside and get them up. Next, attach your mounting blocks to the ceiling using 3.5 inch construction screws. Start as close to the side walls as possible and in line with the guides you created earlier. Alright, so many times in the installation process of these beams, you may come to a part of the ceiling where there's no structural wood, no studs or rafters that you can use your stud finder to locate like we did in the earlier step, and put your screws for your mounting blocks too. If there's no structural wood for those screws to catch, then you'll have nothing to hold the block up. So in that case, you're going to want to go ahead and use mollies. I like to use this butterfly type, and they're actually very easy to use. Let me show you what they are. It's basically a threaded bolt that has a spring-loaded butterfly end on it. And what we do, we'll drill a hole through our blocks, mounting blocks just the same as before, and we're going to push the bolts up through the block. And instead of using screws to go into our wood, we're now going to put these butterfly heads on top of it. So what this is going to do, if you've never used these before, they actually work great. This will allow us to drill a hole into the sheetrock, which is not structural, by the way. It's not going to hold the weight of the beams up. We can now go ahead and close these up, push them up inside the holes. They will open up on the top side of the sheetrock, allowing us to screw and tighten our block to the ceiling. That combined with our PL construction adhesive is going to make this very, very strong, give us a very effective foundation to hold up our beam. So now that we have our mounting blocks mounted firmly to the ceiling with our mollies and construction adhesive, they're straight on our chalk line, they're ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and take a measurement so we know how big to cut our beam to fit it to size. So we're at 47 5/8. I like to write the number up here on the ceiling. So this way when I go downstairs, I've already taken that number. I can look up and see what it is for all of my cuts. All right, next you'll need to measure the length that you need to cut your beam to fit it in place. So the beauty of this product is that even though it looks like real wood, even feels like real wood, it's very, very lightweight. It's made out of a high density polyurethane, which means it's light, it's easy to work with, and it's easy to cut. So regardless of what type of saws you might have at home, just about anything you have is going to work on this. Let me show you. So for example, if you have a jigsaw, very easy to cut through this material with a jigsaw. If you have a circular saw, same thing. It passes through very, very easy. Even if you don't have any of those expensive saws, you might only have a hand saw. very simple to cut this product. Now, it'll also work great on your miter saw. So if you're setting your angles for your roof lines or for the different angles on your miter saw, you can set that on your saw, and then the saw will pass through this product very simply. Super easy to work with, super easy to cut. So regardless of what type of tools you'll have at home, this is definitely a DIY installation, even if you have to use a hand saw. All right, let's get to work. Using your saw, cut or miter the beam to length. Always cut the beam slightly long, about 1/8 of an inch for a tight fit. So now it's time to measure for the side beams, and as you can see, these are on an angle from the roof pitch. Okay, so we have 79 1/4 on the number. However, this cut here is going to need to be on an angle. It's not a square cut. So figuring out these roof line and pitches can be a difficult calculation, and not everyone knows how to do that math. So this is a really simple tool. You can purchase this for probably about 10 bucks at your local hardware store. This is called a T-bevel. And what this will do is allow you to figure out this angle very easily. We can take this and put it up against our beam, and as you can see, it pivots. We're going to push it against the ceiling. And now we can see that we know what this angle is. We take this off and we can transfer that angle right outside to our saw. And that's going to give us the exact cut of that beam. So when we fit it back up inside, it's going to fit there nice and tight. Okay, let's take it outside to the saw and make our cut. We're going to take our T-bevel and we're going to come over to our material. So this is the angle that we figured out that we need this beam to cut up on the ceiling. We mark the length here. We're going to put our T-bevel with the angle right on there, and we're going to make a mark. So there's the angle that we need to cut. That's exactly what we took off the ceiling. Now we can go ahead and we can transfer that angle to the saw. So as you can see on this miter saw, it has a beveling blade. We can set it to many different degrees. The whole idea of this T-bevel is to tell the saw what angle we want to cut on. So when we set this down on the deck and we put it up against the blade, we can see that's a perfect fit. That's exactly the angle we need it to be. And that's going to be the same angle that's up on that ceiling, taking all the guesswork out of it. All right, now, if you don't have an expensive miter saw like this that can bevel and swing in both directions, now that you've made your mark on the material, you can actually even cut it with a handsaw. Remember, this is just foam, so it's very, very easy to cut. Okay, this is the wasted piece, but you can see how easy it is to cut this material. Very easy. All right, so being that we do have a miter saw, we're going to go ahead and make some cuts on here. Here we go. All right, you can see there's our cut piece. You can see the angle that it was cut on, and you can see our material has the angle that we need to go up on that ceiling. It's important to dry fit the beam to make sure that everything fits properly before permanently attaching it to the blocks. And once you're sure you've got a good fit, use construction adhesive on the edges of all the blocks prior to installing the beam. Now slide the beam in place over the blocks of wood and push it tightly to the ceiling. You could put a small pencil mark on the beam or use painter's tape on the outside of the block to mark where the mounting blocks are located. Use screws to fasten through the outside of the beam into each mounting block on both sides of the beam. Be sure to use at least 2 screws per side for each mounting block. You'll want to countersink the screws slightly, but be sure not to over tighten them. All right, now that you've got your beam secured to the ceiling, you can go back and repeat this process for all the other beams in your layout. All right, there it is, the last screw. Now that we have all of our beams up and all screwed in, we can go back with our color match caulk, fill in the screw holes, a little touch-up paint, and we're done. And here it is. The installation is complete. And as you can see, these faux wood beams look just like real wood. For more detailed instructions, information on these faux wood beams, or any of the other great products from Barron Designs, be sure to visit their website at barrondesigns.com.